The National Electrical Code, or NEC, does not explicitly specify clearance requirements between overhead service conductors and hot tubs. However, the NEC does provide general guidance for clearances around bodies of water in Section 680.1. According to NEC Section 680.1, bodies of water include pools, wading pools, hot tubs, and spas. The NEC requires that electrical equipment shall not be located within 10 feet horizontally from the inside walls of any body of water. Now, NEC Section 680.8 specifically addresses clearance requirements for pools, but it does not explicitly mention hot tubs. However, it can be inferred that similar clearance requirements apply to hot tubs, as they are also considered bodies of water. This brings us to the 10-foot horizontal clearance requirement. Based on the NEC requirements, it is likely that the minimum horizontal clearance between overhead service conductors and the hot tub should be 10 feet. This requirement is not always strictly enforced, but it is recommended to adhere to it to maintain safety and minimize electrical hazards. The enforcement of electrical codes is typically handled by local building inspectors. The specific requirements may vary slightly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. There may also be exceptions to the 10-foot clearance requirement in certain cases, such as when the overhead service is installed underground or on a dedicated service pole. In summary, while the NEC does not explicitly specify clearance requirements for overhead service conductors to hot tubs, the 10-foot horizontal clearance requirement for bodies of water in Section 680.1 is generally applicable. It is important to check with local building inspectors and adhere to their requirements to ensure safety and compliance. It is important to understand the basic principles behind these clearance requirements. Firstly, water is a conductor of electricity, and the presence of a hot tub or spa significantly increases the risk of electrical shock. Secondly, overhead power lines carry high voltages, and accidental contact with these lines can be fatal. Thirdly, the 10-foot clearance requirement is intended to provide a safe buffer zone between the power lines and the hot tub, minimizing the risk of electrical hazards. Several factors can influence the interpretation and enforcement of these requirements. One factor is the local building codes and regulations, which may be more stringent than the NEC requirements. Another factor is the specific design and layout of the hot tub and the surrounding area. For example, if the hot tub is located near other structures or equipment, additional clearances may be required. Thirdly, the experience and judgment of the local building inspector can also play a role in the enforcement process. It is also important to note that there may be situations where the 10-foot clearance requirement is not practical or feasible. In these cases, alternative measures may be necessary to ensure safety. For example, the overhead power lines may be relocated or insulated, or a physical barrier may be installed to prevent accidental contact with the lines. The specific type of overhead service can also affect the clearance requirements. For example, service drop conductors, which are the overhead conductors that run from the utility pole to the building, may have different clearance requirements than other types of overhead conductors. The voltage of the overhead service is also a factor. Higher voltage lines typically require greater clearances. It is important to consult with a qualified electrician or engineer to determine the appropriate clearance requirements for a specific installation. The location of the grounding electrode conductor, also known as the grounding wire, is another important consideration. The grounding electrode conductor connects the electrical system to the earth, providing a path for fault current to flow back to the source. The grounding electrode conductor should be located as close as possible to the hot tub, and it should be properly sized and installed to ensure effective grounding. The use of ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs, is also essential for hot tub safety. GFCIs are designed to detect small amounts of current leakage and quickly disconnect the power supply, preventing electrical shock. GFCIs should be installed in all circuits that supply power to the hot tub, including the pump, heater, and lighting circuits. Regular maintenance and inspection of the electrical system is also crucial for hot tub safety. This includes checking the wiring, connections, and grounding system for any signs of damage or corrosion. It also includes testing the GFCIs regularly to ensure that they are functioning properly. It is important to be aware of the potential hazards associated with hot tubs and electricity, and to take all necessary precautions to prevent accidents. This includes keeping electrical appliances and devices away from the hot tub, and never using extension cords or adapters to connect electrical equipment to the power supply. It also includes educating all users of the hot tub about the potential dangers of electricity and water. In addition to the NEC requirements, there may also be local regulations or ordinances that apply to hot tub installations. It is important to check with the local building department to determine the specific requirements for a particular area. The process of obtaining a permit for a hot tub installation typically involves submitting a detailed plan of the proposed installation, including the location of the hot tub, the electrical wiring, and the grounding system. The plan will be reviewed by the building department to ensure that it complies with all applicable codes and regulations. An inspection will be conducted after the installation is complete to verify that the work has been done properly and that all safety requirements have been met. Failure to obtain a permit or to comply with the applicable codes and regulations can result in fines, penalties, and even the removal of the hot tub. It is always best to err on the side of caution and to ensure that all work is done in accordance with the applicable codes and regulations. When planning a hot tub installation, it is important to consider the long-term maintenance and operating costs. This includes the cost of electricity to heat the water, the cost of chemicals to maintain the water quality, and the cost of repairs and maintenance to the equipment. It is also important to consider the potential impact of the hot tub on the environment. Hot tubs can consume a significant amount of energy and water, and they can also contribute to air pollution if they are heated with fossil fuels. There are a number of ways to reduce the environmental impact of a hot tub, such as using energy-efficient equipment, conserving water, and using renewable energy sources. For example, solar panels can be used to heat the water, and a cover can be used to reduce heat loss. It is also important to properly dispose of the chemicals used to maintain the water quality. In conclusion, the clearance requirements for overhead service conductors to hot tubs are an important safety consideration. While the NEC does not explicitly specify these requirements, the 10-foot horizontal clearance requirement for bodies of water in Section 680.1 is generally applicable. It is important to check with local building inspectors and adhere to their requirements to ensure safety and compliance. By understanding the basic principles behind these clearance requirements and taking all necessary precautions, it is possible to enjoy the benefits of a hot tub without compromising safety. Remember to consult with qualified professionals, such as electricians and building inspectors, to ensure that your hot tub installation is safe and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. The goal is to create a safe and enjoyable environment for yourself and your family. Ignoring these regulations can lead to dangerous situations and costly repairs. Always prioritize safety when dealing with electricity and water. This discussion has focused primarily on the horizontal clearance requirements. However, it is important to note that there are also vertical clearance requirements for overhead service conductors. These vertical clearances are typically based on the voltage of the conductors and the type of area they are passing over, such as roadways, sidewalks, or rooftops. The NEC provides detailed tables and guidelines for determining the appropriate vertical clearances. It is important to consult these resources to ensure that the overhead service conductors are installed at a safe height. In addition to the clearance requirements, there are also requirements for the type and size of conductors used for overhead service. The conductors must be properly sized to carry the anticipated load, and they must be insulated to prevent electrical shock. The NEC specifies the minimum conductor sizes and insulation requirements for various types of overhead service. It is important to use the correct type and size of conductors to ensure a safe and reliable electrical system. The method of supporting the overhead service conductors is also an important consideration. The conductors must be properly supported to prevent sagging or breaking. The supports must be strong enough to withstand the weight of the conductors, as well as wind and ice loads. The NEC provides guidelines for selecting and installing the appropriate supports for overhead service conductors. The location of the service disconnect is another important factor to consider. The service disconnect is the main switch or circuit breaker that disconnects the building's electrical system from the utility power supply. The service disconnect must be readily accessible and located in a safe and convenient location. The NEC specifies the requirements for the location and installation of the service disconnect. It is also important to consider the potential for future expansion or modifications to the electrical system. When planning a hot tub installation, it is wise to anticipate any future needs and to ensure that the electrical system is capable of handling the additional load. This may involve installing a larger service entrance or adding additional circuits. Planning for the future can save time and money in the long run. Remember that the information provided here is for general guidance only and should not be considered a substitute for professional advice. Always consult with qualified professionals, such as electricians and building inspectors, to ensure that your hot tub installation is safe and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. They can provide specific recommendations based on your individual circumstances and help you to avoid potential problems. Keeping informed and staying proactive is key to a successful and safe hot tub installation. Always double-check your work and ensure everything is up to code, even if it seems like a minor detail. The safety of yourself and others depends on it.